So help me God, dude, I see one more car with reindeer antlers on. Fucking type shit about it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of year. Bath & Body Works candles are on sale, and I shelled out a couple hundred at Amazon. You know what that means. It's the holidays, baby. The month of November is finally over. I listened to 18 more albums, and I'm gonna give you a little bit of a review and rating for each one. You guys know the drill. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the club. Gonna tell you if each album is worth your time or not. As always, there's some bangers, there's some stinkers. We're gonna cover them all. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe for content just like this. I also do brackets and tier lists if that's your sort of thing. But without further ado, let's just get right into it. Started off the month incredibly strong with Songs of a Lost World by The Cure. I consider myself a pretty casual fan of The Cure. I love most of their material released in the 80s and steered clear of pretty much everything they offered in the early to late 2000s. They are one of my dad's favorite bands. I really got into them through him, but I was a little hesitant to spin this record, seeing that Robert Smith is getting pretty old and their track record as of late has been less than spectacular. But I am happy to report that Songs of a Lost World is some of their most cathartic and explosive to date. So rich, so deep, and so personal from start to finish. Truly feels like the end game for the band, successfully and intricately playing with themes of death, aging, and loss. It's devastating at points, especially on the closer end song, which is inarguably one of The Cure's most epic and bombastic tracks to date. It's a bit of a miracle that this record is as amazing as it is. A great Cure album was not on my bingo card for 2024, but here we are. It's pretty hard to walk away from this thing and not admit that it is a powerful listen. So I'm going to give The Cure a 9. All right, next I listened to Night Palace by Mount Eerie. I've listened to The Microphones, The Glow Part 2 before, one of AOTY's most critically acclaimed and beloved records. And while there were elements and themes that I found intriguing, experimental, and powerful, I ultimately found myself enjoying the concept of the record more than the record itself. I know. Hey, I know. And unfortunately, I am finding myself in a similar position with Night Palace. While it's more accessible than the previously mentioned record, it's still a little too overindulgent and pretentious in my opinion. It's written very well, with the majority of these tracks here feeling like very fleshed out and personal poems. I'm just not rocking with this thing sonically. A lot of the content here is far too short, preventing a lot of this from feeling truly satisfying. The swelling, epic, intense, and grandiose crescendos on this record are not only far and few between, but also too short-lived. The best tracks this record has to offer are its longer ones, which gives its material room to breathe and flourish. Obviously, it didn't hate this. It's still composed pretty well, but it's just not my cup of tea and couldn't find much enjoyment where it seems others have. So I'm gonna give Night Palace a 6.5.
Please don't do no most right now. If I hit you up, please don't go ghost right now. Don't do it to me. Don't do it to me, baby. Don't do it to me. Don't do it to me.
Next I listened to Lil Uzi Vert's Eternal Atake 2. I really don't have much to say about this record, but it's not a fun listen. Whereas Pink Tape from last year felt a little bit like a mixed bag, this one really has nothing to offer whatsoever. I've never really been the biggest Uzi fan to begin with, and this record is really not doing them any justice. If you're willing to turn your brain off and kind of just like go with the flow of the record, I'm sure that you can maybe find some dumb enjoyment here, but as someone that wants to actually see music that feels like there was some thought put into it, there is really not much to write home about here. Feels incredibly watered down, lacking of any personality, ambition, or variety. I mean, I'd say it was disappointing if I was even looking forward to this release, but I wasn't. This record was so bad that it left me questioning Uzi's mental well-being. Definitely one of the worst releases to come out of this year. Just one that I really struggled to get through, truthfully. I think that rage is an incredibly difficult genre to pull off successfully, and Uzi just doesn't have the chops for it. Childish, elementary, and just pretty awful. I'm gonna give Uzi a 2.5.
Goddamn, they done got Diddy. I used to look up to that nigga, even when that nigga Pac dissed him. I wonder if he paid off Pac killers. I wish them niggas in LA ain't never pop.
Next, I listened to You Only Die Once by Freddie Gibbs. Solid record, albeit a little underwhelming and nothing special. Gibbs is an incredibly talented and versatile lyricist and rapper, but paired with unremarkable production, he's put at a pretty noticeable disadvantage. When accompanied by a legend like Madlib or The Alchemist, he puts out his best material. He's still carrying the weight of this record on his shoulders, but the sonic palette of this record is pretty standard. With that out of the way, this thing is still pretty enjoyable. I think that Gibbs has a pretty intoxicating presence on every track and dominates every verse as expected. He's certainly one of my favorite rappers working today, and he comes through with some clever bars and some smooth flows, but nothing crazy, nothing that really blew me away. But a fun record nonetheless. Feels like an appetizer to the greater record Montana that may be coming out next year, knock on wood. But I'm gonna give Freddie Gibbs a 7.
Those who died are justified, but wearing the badge and you're chosen white. You're justified. Those that died, but wearing the badge and you're chosen white.
Next, I listened to Rage Against the Machine by Rage Against the Machine. I, like the rest of the country, woke up to some pretty distressing news on November 6th that will not only impact the next 4 years of our nation, but the countless years to follow. I'm disappointed. I'm scared, appalled, but most importantly, I am pissed the fuck off. We, the majority, did it to ourselves, and people who voted how they voted are going to have to experience the consequences of their actions. What sucks, though, is that the people who didn't vote for him, who are also the people who are likely more affected by his actions, are also about to experience the consequences of those voters' actions. So be disappointed, be scared, be appalled, be pissed the fuck off. But stand for what you believe in, and don't let our corrupt government get in the way of what you know is right. This record felt fitting for a listen in response to what we are about to go through, what we've been going through. The messages, the lyricism, the themes of this record remain true today, if not more than ever. And we need to stand together. We need to be there for each other. We need to be there for people that are less fortunate than we are. This is not a political channel. I want to make that very clear. But with that being said, this is a channel that accepts everyone, regardless of race, gender, faith, and it is a channel that does not tolerate hate of any kind. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be the worst. And that's kind of all there is to say. And I'm going to give Rage Against the Machine a 9.5.
But bullshit me, she freaky, kinda leak it, Dalai Lama, Doechii. Cooler than a fan, but she get hotter than a sauna. Take a trip out to Japan and I tsunami her vagina. Wine it down, Benihana. I'm the new hip-hop Madonna. I'm the new hip-hop Madonna. I'm the trap Grace Jones. I don't know what type of motherfucking crap they own.
Next, I listened to Alligator Bites Never Heal by Doechii. If nothing else, this record demonstrates an overwhelming amount of potential. Infectious energy, quirky and witty lyricism, hard-hitting production, and some really contagious hooks. Really just wish we got a little bit more. With this being a mixtape and with most of the tracks here being less than 2 minutes in length, this record feels more like a collection of half-fleshed out ideas and less like a cohesive project that can stand on its own. But I'm really excited to see what Doechii does next, especially if we can expect a full-length LP in the near future. Because if this record is anything to go off of, she's got it. One of the most intriguing new hip-hop artists on the block, and despite this record having quite a few shortcomings and feeling too sparse in its elaboration and execution, there's a lot to really admire here. And I've found a decent chunk of these tracks still in heavy rotation today. And I'm gonna give Doechii an 8. I cannot wait to see what she does next.
To have your children, your flock,
Next, I listened to Patterns in Repeat by Laura Marling. I've never spun a Laura Marling record before, wasn't quite sure what to expect, only knew that this thing was getting a lot of praise from critics. I found it to be intimate, warm, and raw, with each pluck of a guitar string and each breath from Marling feeling incredibly vulnerable and heartfelt. Very reminiscent of the likes of artists like Adrian Lenker of Big Thief and Sufjan Stevens. Everything is very stripped back and simply produced, which plays more into the strengths of the vocalist and her writing. Some of the tracks start to feel a little unremarkable when preceded or followed by standout tracks, but this thing is pretty breathtaking, even if it stalls at points. Not something that I find myself returning to very often, just because it is a very melancholy listen, but it's a beautiful one, and it's hard to find any real flaws in it, despite it kind of lulling at points. So I'm gonna give Laura Marling an 8.
A real nigga see a rollie, then he motivated. A broke nigga see it, then he's supposed to hate it. Sheep and shepherds, chiefs and Indians. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Next, I listened to Soul Burger by Absol. Never heard an Absol record before either. And honestly, I left feeling somewhat unsatisfied. His writing is pretty decent most of the time, but his delivery ranges from engaging to awkward and annoying. The production is fine, nothing special. Everything is pretty standard at best and messy and unfocused at worst. Some of these tracks feel as though they're tripping over themselves and not really sure where to go outside of a standard repetitive beat and a decent feature. I'll likely never return to this again, even if some of it wasn't all that bad, but pretty forgettable all around. I'm gonna give Absol a 5.5. Next, I listened to the Doom soundtrack by Mick Gordon, which is definitely one of the greatest video game soundtracks of all time. But what makes this thing so cool is that it's also one of the greatest industrial metal albums of all time. Fundamentally inspiring and changing the heavy music scene in the mid-2010s, while still being accessible and a fantastic jumping on point for people looking to experiment with the genre. My only real critique is that this thing is a little too long for its own good. Obviously not an issue within the context of the game, but for a casual listening experience, it's certainly a bit of a marathon. The record nails atmosphere, and you really feel like you're embarking on a journey listening to this thing from start to finish, much like the protagonist of the game. It almost feels silly to claim this as one of my favorite metal records of all time, but like, this thing bangs. So much fun from front to back and worth a listen even if it's a lengthy one. And I'm gonna give the Doom soundtrack an 8.5.
There's rules to this shit, fools dare care. Everybody wanna rule the world with tears for fear. Yeah, tell it on the mountain hill. Running up their mouth bill, everybody doubting still.
To celebrate its 20th anniversary, I listened to Food by MF Doom. Let me get the stuff that I don't like out of the way. Food is not as great as Mad Villainy, or even Vaudeville Villain, despite it still being a great vibe with masterclass songwriting and lyricism. But there are far too many interlude skits that sort of spoil the flow of the entire album, especially in the special recipes section of the record. These skits are fun, yes, but make a full re-listen a little difficult. But this record is still a wildly fun ride. So different in aesthetic and sound from its counterparts, which reserves itself a unique spot in the hip-hop scene. Doom's flow, pen game, and charisma are this record's strong suit, as with most of his material. I wasn't loving the instrumentals this time around, but still found some enjoyment in some of the more standout tracks, like Hoe Cakes, like One Beer, like Rap Snitch Knishes. This is probably one of the most negative positive reviews I've ever given, so I'll just shut up. But this is a solid record, despite it being maybe a little overrated. And I'm gonna give Food an 8.
That you cut me open just to watch me burn. Gave up who I am for who you wanted me to be.
Next, I listened to From Zero by Linkin Park. Some really solid grooves and some engaging explosive moments, but for the most part, this thing comes and goes without really making that big of an impact on the listener. I appreciate the band attempting to recapture lightning in a bottle akin to their earlier work, but unfortunately, I think that they're just a product of their time with a sound that just doesn't work as well nowadays. When it's good, it still feels incredibly generic, safe, and hollow. The best moments on this record are the tracks that feel like they're imitating older material, which inherently dates everything you could find here. You can tell that they're trying pretty hard from start to finish, yet everything still feels undeniably lazy and a little phoned in. The vocals were surprisingly the most engaging element of the record, with the production, songwriting, and song structure feeling severely lacking. Not awful, but not good either. I'm gonna give Linkin Park a 6.
I can say I hope it will be worth what I give up.
Next, I listened to Santigold by Santigold. Santigold's self-titled record is a breath of fresh air in the indie-tronica genre, delivering a unique and energetic vocal performance accompanied by some of the catchiest and most iconic production of the late 2000s. Said to be created in an attempt to defy expectations of a black woman to sing R&B, Santigold aims for a powerhouse indie rock electropop sound that she truly masters. Feels very reminiscent of some older material from the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, which I'm sure was a somewhat intentional, if not indirect, inspiration. Very little adult moment on this project, with only a sparse couple of tracks, feeling a little aimless and unfocused in comparison to its strongest material. Really big fan of LES Artistes, Creator, and Starstruck. A very weird yet very rewarding listen. And I'm gonna give Santigold an 8.
Goddamn, conversations with people. Crazy how one day the legends forget that they equal on this under pressure sequel. We not taking it back, we keeping it pushing. People scared of change, but you'll find me deep in the cushion.
Next, I listened to No Pressure by Logic. One of my biggest gripes with Logic's older material is the inclusion of one-dimensional beats. Luckily for No Pressure, No ID comes through with some really engaging, layered, and dynamic instrumentals, which I feel complement Logic's performance and flow pretty effortlessly. This is a necessity to a successful Logic record, in my opinion, as without something to back him up, he falls into like this lyrical miracle category. And I'm happy to report that Logic's giving his all here, and is providing a pretty smart, passionate, and catchy vocal delivery. The album holds a heavy weight given the context of it being his last record at the time, in exchange for him moving forward as a father, putting his rap career behind him. These themes ooze throughout the core of every track here, which does wonders for it cohesively. The record isn't pushing boundaries or defining a genre and dangers on becoming derivative of its contemporaries, but it's a solid record nonetheless. So I'm gonna give Logic a 7.5. Next, I listened to the new Father John Misty record, Mahashmashana. I've never listened to a Father John Misty record. Honestly, I thought he was Christian rock, so I steered clear. I'm happy to report that this record is actually one of the most stunning and powerful records to come out of this year. Tillman's vocals are full of bravado that you'd come to expect in like a Disney movie climax that is rich with passion, pain, and experience. This passion excels already great song structure, writing, and production, and really elevates the material. From the epic and grandiose title track to the engagingly strange yet bombastic chorus on Screamland. There's a lot to admire here. Only track I'm not quite digging as much is Being You, which I felt lacked that energy that the other tracks had. Overall, can't say I disliked much here, even if I wish some of the slower tracks had some more oomph to them. But yeah, consider me a new fan. I'm gonna give them an 8.5. And that's it. That's everything that I listened to in the month of What the what's with all the notes, man? It's... Kendrick dropped? And last but not least, I listened to GNX by Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick is the only artist who can put a record out that is so incredibly overrated yet still a masterpiece. GNX is receiving a whole lot of love, and rightfully so, a surprise drop that isn't concerned with message or intricate meaning, not concerned with upholding a concept or telling a story. No, this is Kendrick at his most aggressive and egotistical. Having just come off of the success of his monumental diss track run against Drake, becoming the most talked about man in the music community and internet space of 2024, and announcing his performance for the 2025 Super Bowl halftime show, you could call this a victory lap, but it's not even really that. It's a simple record, but a unique introspective on Kendrick's perspective and the burdens that his morals, expectations, and self-indulgence can weigh on him. It's one of his most consistent records to date, and while it may lack substance where his older material excelled at, it's still a powerful and immensely catchy record that will undeniably be making my year-end list. Kendrick's the GOAT. We've been new. We all know. And while I'm not quite loving Peekaboo and the title track on this record, I think it's a little bit too silly for my own liking. This thing is pretty kick-ass. Not the first person to say that. I'm gonna give Kendrick a 9. And if you haven't watched my Kendrick Lamar song bracket, go ahead and check it out right here. And that is actually everything that I listened to in the month of November. It was a great month for music. I'm so sad that the year is about to end. This has been one of the greatest years for music in a long while. Glad that I could run through this with you guys by my side. We've been having a lot of fun. I plan on doing one more monthly recap before the year ends, as well as list week, which is coming right around the corner. So I'm gonna be busy. I'm gonna be a busy man. As always, if you like what you saw, give me a like, give me a comment, give me a share, subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. It would mean the world to me if you showed some support in any way, shape, or form. What did you listen to this month? Anything that I missed? Let me know in the comments below. I love you all. Mwah, mwah, kisses. Let's get this bread. Peace out, Home Scout. What are you still doing here? Go. Go. Get out of here.
Fuck.